Someone once said, if your voice is loud, some people will listen. But if your message is strong, everyone will pay attention. Hi everyone, welcome to Tat channel, and today I have an inspiring story for you.
In a vast kingdom, there was a minister whom the king trusted deeply. He wasn't just highly intelligent, but also someone who always provided the right advice, helping the king solve critical matters of the state. No major decision was made without consulting him. Thanks to his wisdom, the minister became the king's most valued advisor. Whenever the court faced difficulties, he was there to find the best solution. The king respected him, and the people admired him. But for that very reason, he also became the target of jealousy. In the royal court, many officials envied the trust the king placed in him. These were men of lesser talent who longed for the same favor he received. They couldn't understand why the king relied on him so much, or why, after so many years, his position remained unshaken. Their jealousy grew, turning into whispered conversations in the palace halls. They didn't dare oppose him openly, but they quietly sought ways to bring him down, hoping that one day he would lose the king's favor. The minister was well aware of this. He knew he was the subject of envy and resentment, but he didn't let it bother him. He believed that as long as he remained righteous and devoted to the kingdom, no amount of gossip could change the truth. But what he didn't expect was that one day his enemies would find a different way to trouble him, not by attacking him directly, but by targeting his own son. One morning, like every other day, the king stepped out of the palace to meet his people. As he walked through the gates, his eyes fell upon a familiar boy, the son of the minister he trusted most. Every day, without fail, the boy would be there, waiting with a calm expression. The king smiled knowingly and, as usual, pulled out 2 coins from his sleeve, one gleaming gold, the other a bright silver. He placed them before the boy and asked in a half-serious, half-amused tone, "Now, tell me, which is more valuable, gold or silver?" The boy looked up at the king, his eyes steady and unwavering. Without hesitation, he reached out and picked up the silver coin. The king burst into laughter, his hearty chuckle echoing through the crowd. The courtiers standing nearby joined in, some whispering to each other with mocking smiles. Even the son of the wisest minister doesn't know that gold is more valuable than silver. One official murmured just loud enough for those around him to hear. The king shook his head in apparent disbelief, then turned to those around him, still chuckling. "Look at this. I ask him the same question every day, and every day he chooses silver over gold." The crowd erupted in laughter once more. Some found it amusing, others ridiculed the boy. To them, it was nothing more than an entertaining spectacle, a foolish child who couldn't tell the difference between 2 metals. But, among the laughter, one man remained silent. The minister, the boy's father, stood still, his face unreadable, his heart unsettled. He felt a quiet ache, not because of the king's words, but because he couldn't understand why his son was doing this. Without saying a word, he turned and walked away, heading home with a single burning question in his mind: why does my son keep choosing silver? After the morning's events, the minister returned home with a heavy heart. The echoes of laughter and ridicule still rang in his ears. As a father, he couldn't understand why his son behaved this way. The boy was not foolish, he knew that. But if his son truly understood that gold was more valuable than silver, why did he keep choosing the silver coin every single day? As he stepped into the house, he saw his son sitting quietly, as if expecting this conversation. The minister walked toward him, his voice low, carrying a mix of sadness and concern. "My son, tell me the truth. Which is more valuable, gold or silver?" The boy looked up at his father, his eyes clear and unwavering. "Gold is more valuable than silver, father." His answer only deepened the minister's confusion. The father frowned, his tone more serious now. "If you know that gold is more valuable, then why do you choose the silver coin every time the king asks?" "Today, the entire court mocked me. They called you a fool. Do you realize that?" The boy did not answer immediately. He held his father's gaze for a long moment before speaking softly. "Father, I know they laugh at me, but have you ever wondered why the king asks me the same question every day?" The minister froze at his son's question. The boy continued, "Every morning, the king places 2 coins before me and asks me to choose. If I pick gold, the king will lose interest, and he will never ask me again. But if I pick silver, the king laughs, the court laughs, and tomorrow he will place the coins before me once more." With that, the boy walked over to a small box in the corner of the room and opened it. Inside were dozens of shining silver coins. "Do you see, father? If I had chosen gold from the beginning, I would have only one coin. But by choosing silver, I now have a whole treasure." The minister stood in silence. In that moment, he realized that his son was not foolish at all. In fact, the boy might have been wiser than him all along. The minister stared at the shimmering silver coins inside the small box his son had just opened. The way they reflected the light left him momentarily speechless. He had never imagined that this seemingly simple exchange between the king and his son held such deep wisdom. He sat down beside his son, his voice slow and thoughtful, as if trying to grasp the boy's reasoning. "You told me that if you chose gold, the king would stop asking you. But why do you want to continue this game?" The boy smiled slightly, his eyes gleaming with a sharp intelligence that few could recognize. He answered softly, "Father, if I took the gold coin, I would only have one. But by choosing silver, I get another tomorrow, and another the day after that. Every day, I receive another silver coin, and no one realizes that I am quietly building my own treasure." He picked up a silver coin, rolling it between his fingers before continuing. "The king enjoys this game. He enjoys laughing, seeing me choose the wrong coin, and because of that, he will keep placing silver and gold before me. But what matters is not what others think, it's that I know exactly what I'm doing." The minister sat in silence. He had always believed that wisdom lay in giving the right answer, but today, his son had taught him a different lesson. Sometimes, it is not necessary to prove that you are right. What truly matters is knowing how to seize opportunities, being patient, and understanding how to achieve long-term success. He placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his eyes filled with pride. "I see now. You are not foolish. You are simply walking a path that no one else recognizes." The boy nodded gently. In that quiet room, father and son came to the same realization. True wisdom does not always need to be displayed, it lies in the way one silently turns it into an advantage. The minister quietly observed his son. He had always believed that wisdom was shown through correct answers and smart decisions recognized by others. But today, with nothing more than a small box filled with silver coins, he realized that wisdom wasn't just about obvious intelligence, it was about patience, the art of waiting, and the ability to seize opportunities that others overlooked. The king's words and the court's laughter suddenly felt meaningless. They mocked his son, but none of them understood that the very silver coins they dismissed as trivial were, in fact, building into a greater treasure. His son didn't need to prove his intelligence, because true wisdom wasn't about seeking validation, it was about knowing how to turn any situation into an advantage. The minister placed a hand on his son's shoulder, his voice softer than ever. "You have taught me an important lesson. I always believed that a wise person must prove their intelligence to others, but you've shown me that sometimes true wisdom doesn't need to be displayed. It can be patience, observation, and knowing when to wait for the right moment." The boy smiled slightly. He had never sought his father's approval, but in the minister's eyes, he now saw a deep sense of pride. From that day forward, whenever someone in the royal court mocked his son, the minister simply smiled. He no longer cared about their words, because he knew his son's wisdom was beyond their understanding. In life, those who are seen as fools are sometimes the wisest of all. The only difference is that the world isn't always wise enough to recognize it. From that day on, the minister no longer cared about the court's ridicule or the king's doubtful glances. He had come to understand that his son was not foolish, on the contrary. The boy possessed a wisdom that few could recognize. Every morning, the king continued to place 2 coins before the boy, 1 gold and 1 silver, and as always, the boy chose the silver coin. The king laughed in amusement, and the courtiers shook their heads in mockery. But only the father and son understood that each time the boy picked up the silver coin, he wasn't just taking a piece of money, he was seizing an opportunity. The minister began to see the world differently. He realized that wisdom was not always about proving oneself to others. True intelligence lay in knowing exactly what you were doing without needing validation, without needing to explain, just quietly acting and letting the results speak for themselves. One day, as usual, the king asked the boy again, "Tell me, which is more valuable, gold or silver?" The boy smiled and replied as he always did, "Your Majesty, silver is more valuable than gold." The king laughed heartily. The courtiers murmured among themselves. But in the boy's heart, he knew he had just earned another silver coin. The minister looked at his son and smiled with pride. The boy did not need anyone's approval because he had already learned an important truth. A truly wise person is not the one who constantly tries to appear intelligent, but the one who uses their wisdom to achieve their goals without needing recognition. And so, the story continued, one silver coin at a time, one lesson at a time. The world remained the same. Some would laugh, some would fail to understand, but only those with true insight could recognize the value of silent wisdom. Life is full of paradoxes that not everyone notices. Some people do very little yet receive endless praise, while others quietly create great value but remain unrecognized. The story of the boy and the king is a perfect example of this truth. Despite being mocked every day, the boy remained steadfast in his choice. He was never hurt by the king's laughter or the court's ridicule because he understood that they only saw the surface, not the deeper meaning. He didn't need to prove his intelligence to anyone, because true wisdom isn't about speaking, it's about knowing when and how to act. The minister, after realizing the lesson from his son, also changed his perspective on the world. He no longer tried to argue or explain himself to those who wouldn't understand. Instead, he chose silence, knowing that the truth does not need to be defended with words, but proven through results. And his son, earning one silver coin at a time, had taught him this lesson in the simplest yet most profound way. In life, those who are considered foolish, sometimes the ones who understand the most. They don't seek validation from others because they are clear about their own path. On the other hand, those who constantly try to prove themselves are often the ones who truly lack understanding. So, if you know that what you're doing is right, don't be discouraged by laughter or skeptical looks. Stay firm on your path, because the world is not always wise enough to recognize true value. In the end, only time will reveal who is truly intelligent. All along,